Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. How are we on the season finale of season 2 already? I was thinking about that this morning. When I woke up, I was like, I'm going to watch the season 2 finale today of Bungo Stray Dogs. And I was like, wait a minute, we're already on season 2's finale? I feel like I just started this series. It's crazy, right? But oh my gosh, I have loved season 2. Season 2 has been so much fun. And it started out with the Dark Age arc, and it was so... Dark Age arc is right up my alley for the type of shows I like. I love crime noir. I love like a dark, gritty atmosphere. I love political talks and strategies with characters. I love characters that have like intricate relationships and these webs with other characters, and just the entire aesthetic of the Dark Age arc was right up my alley. I loved it. And so I had been trepidatious going into the rest of the season because I'm like, oh, is that tonal shift going to be weird? And it honestly hasn't been. It's like the Dark Age arc has set everything up and then gets expanded upon in season 2. And so the fact that it was a light novel and they chose to start out the second season with it was such a smart move. And as I'm recording this, I am in the process of reading the manga. I've started reading the manga. A fellow YouTuber sent me a link to all the different manga volumes, so thank you, and the light novels. So I've read up to volume 3 at this point. I've read up to volume 3 of the manga, and it's the volume 3 of the manga ends with episode 10 of season 1. So I feel like I'm just kind of like chipping away to catch up, and so I feel really excited about that. But I think after this episode, after I'm done recording it, as I do, because the OVA is next after this, I think I'm going to read Dazai's entrance exam and the Dark Age before I finish with the OVA. So I'll be able to talk about those, I think, when I do the OVA and talk about how those are. So I'm pretty excited for that. I want to talk about those next episode when I do the OVA. And then after the OVA, I'm going to be watching Dead Apple, which I'm really excited about because everybody's been like, oh, the movie. And I'm like, cool. So before we start season 3, I'll still have the OVA, which is Kunikita based. And so I'm going to read Dazai's entrance exam and hopefully the Dark Age. At least I'm going to read the entrance exam novel before the OVA so I can talk about both of those in the next episode. And then before Dead Apple, I want to read Dazai in the Dark Age arc, the light novel for that. So I'll have some comments about that in the next couple of videos before we get into season 3. But this show, there's just something about Akutagawa and Atsushi's relationship. Part of me is like, you two boys need some emotional support animals to help you you need a raccoon like Poe to help you get through these times, these dark times. But part of me like wants to give each of these boys a hug, and part of me was just like slowly squish them together and be like, no kiss. And so I'm just I don't have a lot of ships in this show. But obviously one of them is Atsushi and Akutagawa. They're just too similar. They're two similar characters, but they complement each other in such weird ways. And the ending of last episode with Fitzgerald and Akutagawa and Atsushi, and Fitzgerald just going Super Saiyan with his ridiculous ability, and that just calm before the storm of Akutagawa and Atsushi both kind of acknowledging each other and saying, look, we realize we're not so different, you and I. We both have these problems. Let's just shut this Fitzgerald guy up and then get on with it. So I loved it. And then Atsushi telling Akutagawa, he's like, Dazai recognized you a long time ago. You can quit carrying a torch for him. He recognizes you. Get it? And it's like, it's so good. It was so good. Fitzgerald's ability is amazing. I love it. It's perfect. It's my brother had said back when I was asking about Fitzgerald, he's like, Fitzgerald's power's so obvious. And I was like, I don't get it. And I told him the other day, I was like, I get it. And he was like, it's hilarious, right? And I was like, yes. So I'm very curious because even though this is a season finale, I just can't picture them getting rid of Fitzgerald yet. He's such a cool character that I just can't picture him leaving the story yet. Maybe they incapacitate him, maybe they arrest him, and but he has all this money, he could just get out. What they need to do is drain his bank account. If they can find a way to drain Fitzgerald's bank account where he has no money, then he can't spend anything, and then he can't have any power. That's what needs to happen, that would be so ironic because Fitzgerald's called these two boys stray dogs from the slums because they're just, from the bottom of the barrel. It would be hilarious if that was actually Fitzgerald's start, that he was from the bottom of the barrel and he slowly kept gaining money, kept gaining power, and started this snowball effect and if he loses all his money, he'd start back at square one. That would be really cool. That would be neat. And he'd be kind of on the same level as them. So that's the only reason, that's the only way I think they could stop him, is to drain his money, because then he wouldn't be able to get any more powerful. The question is, how would you do that? And that's where I think Dazai would come in, and maybe Kyoka, if they could find a way to get into his bank account. But I don't know how they would do that. But that's the only thing I could think of, is to somehow drain him of his money, and then he wouldn't be powerful anymore. But it's just, this last episode set up such a shonen finale, and it's been a while since I've watched a really, really fun shonen. Like, Jujutsu Kaisen's fun, but it's got a lot more, like, it's a lot darker and has some more gripping themes, I think. But this is a good time. I love it. I love it so much. But yeah, y'all, I am ready to dive into this season finale. If I may shed away my burden now. That could refer to a lot of things. That could refer to Atsushi, because as several of you have commented, and as the manga kind of establishes, Atsushi doesn't really have control of his tiger form. Because I kept being like, why won't Atsushi turn into a full tiger? Because that seems like it'd be the most optimal thing. But a lot of you have commented, and the manga makes reference to it as well, that he doesn't really have control over his ability, so he can't turn into a full tiger, so that makes sense. And he's already OP enough with the regeneration powers. Let's not make Atsushi too OP. It could refer to, may I shed away my burden, it could refer to Akutagawa, because his coat, what I like that the manga does is it makes, and they don't really do that so much in the anime, because I think it'd be a lot of work to animate it, but in the manga, whenever he uses his power, his coat actually leaves his body and it exposes his clothing and his self underneath. So I think that's really cool. So it could refer to Akutagawa, could refer to Atsushi, it could refer to Fitzgerald. His daughter has died and he wants to bring her back. I'm like, as we've seen in Full Metal Alchemist and other shows, you don't just bring people back from the dead. It doesn't work like that. There's usually something bad that happens. So I'm like, Fitzgerald, are you opening Pandora's box? Are you willing to, like, risk that? Because that seems like that won't go well. But yeah, so it could refer to all three of them. So that's really exciting. But y'all, I'm ready. I woke up this morning and I was like, nope, we're watching Bungo Stray Dogs. It's time. It is time. So let's do this, shall we? Let us start. And we are going to start episode 12 here of season 2 of Bungo Stray Dogs here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh my gosh! This episode was such a good season finale. It definitely felt like a season finale, but not like a series finale. That's the thing. Season 1 ended like, as season 1 ended, you definitely knew that there was going to be a season 2, because it didn't feel like a season finale. It just felt like a transition. The story felt like it was transitioning into something different, into a tonal shift, and it didn't feel like a season finale. It just felt like, oh, okay, cool, we're setting up Fitzgerald and these members. That's interesting. But it didn't feel like a season finale. This episode felt like a season finale. It felt like the end of an arc. The season 1 finale felt like a transition in between arcs. Like, it just felt like a transitional episode. This felt like the ending of an arc and the slow beginnings of something else. There's so much fascinating about this episode. From episode 7 on in this second season, I've loved every episode. And this, as the episode was going on here, I was like, it feels like the season finale. It's wrapping up. It's a lot more low key, but there's so much payoff in this episode. But not just payoff, there's a ton of setup. And having read the manga, like I said, I'm only on volume 3, but having read volume 3 after watching this episode, I'm glad that I did going into this, because oh my god, Fyodor, yeah, we're gonna talk about him, but oh my gosh, just character revelations, character payoffs, character mysteries, things being set up. Yeah, we need to talk about this episode, but oh my god, it felt so good. And the ED paying off, like, oh man, this definitely felt like the end of season 2, and I'm really excited for season 3. We still have the OVA and the movie to watch, of course, but there's so much being set up with this episode, and I was fangirling so much, and this just all the feels, like it felt like the epic conclusion of the battle. And like I said, I figured someone else had to drain his account, but in reality, it makes sense that Fitzgerald was just using his own money up, and it just kept going and going, and eventually he ran out. Which I love the tie to him saying, like, I'm sorry, Zelda. And it's tying to Fitzgerald and the Great Gatsby, Jay Gatsby, being like, still loving Daisy after everything. So the conversation between Dazai and Kyoka is so interesting, and there's so many parallels between all of these characters. But Dazai's deal is that he has connections to a lot of different channels. He has connections back to the Port Mafia. He has connections to the agency. He has connections to the special ops. Dazai is kind of our middleman, which is funny because usually when you think of a middleman, you think that a middleman or a middle person is stuck in between parties and they don't have a lot of power. But in Dazai's case, Dazai's the middleman that has all the power because he does. He's a middleman, so he's able to fluidly go in between agencies flawlessly without any problem. But he also carries some control within those agencies and within those relationships, which is interesting because that's usually not the case. So Dazai is a very unique character in a story like this. And when he tells Kyoka-chan, he's like, I can set you up with a life of killing. If you really think you're good for nothing else than murdering people, we'll go back to the Port Mafia and I'll set you up for that. Or I'll turn you over to the special ops and they'll use your ability for that, for all of whatever they do. He's like, if you want to, we can do that. And you can tell that she's instantly like, He says, but your anguish isn't yours alone. He's like, you're not the only one struggling. And I love this line. What should one do when what they want to be isn't what they're best at? Because that's tying back to Koyo's words. She's like, some people bloom best in darkness. It's tying back to Dazai. Dazai's like, what I want isn't what... Dazai's like a natural born killer. Like, he is the perfect... Mori wanted him so bad because he's perfect at what he does. And he's like, I hate it. That's why he's, suicidal. He's like, I hate being in this darkness that I can't escape because it's what I'm good at. And everyone fights searching for the correct way to live their lives. And it's tying back to Oda and him talking to Hirotsu and talking about Oda's words there. Like, it's just, it's so good. And then, so, how ought they live? No one can say. Basically saying, like, you are the only one in control of what you do. All we have is the right to waver. So we can change our minds. We can go back and forth. Like, we don't have to settle for whatever's told of us. And that goes back to Atsushi and the orphanage. It goes back to Akutagawa and what even Dazai's words towards him. It connects all these characters together. And it's like we're but like a bunch of stray dogs who have hit rock bottom. Roll credits, right? The theme of the story of overcoming your past and doing what you want to do and finding a means to do it and a purpose and identity. It's so good. But, oh my gosh. And there's so much to talk about. So I'm rewatching this episode because I want to go back through everything. I'm sorry, but if y'all ain't shipping Akutagawa and Atsushi, where you at? Because that's just the Atsushi saving him despite himself. And I love that Akutagawa saving Atsushi despite himself. I love he's like, die, weird tiger. It's like, you're saving him. Shut up. And him calling out and Atsushi waking up, like, and using like the coat as a tarmac to get back to the ship. And then wrapping it around himself, like that's such a cool... That goes back to Dazai talking about at the very end there with Hirotsu, saying Akutagawa's ability is best as a support, which is so intriguing because, yeah, that's the thing. Akutagawa has a really cool ability, but Akutagawa himself doesn't have the strong constitution. He doesn't have the fortitude to use it to its best ability. Like, it's a coat. It's a literal piece of apparel that gives him power. But it's sort of like the thing... I'm thinking of a character in another show, but I can't talk about that character because it's spoilers, so I won't. But I won't do that. But it's basically his outfit is an apparel. He doesn't have a body that's suited for his ability. That is what I'm saying. And if you know the other character I'm talking about, you can put a spoiler tag in the comments if you know the character I'm talking about from this other shonen series. But he's a character that has a power that his body is not suited for. His body is weak and frail, and the power of Rashomon gives Akutagawa the ability to fight and the ability to defend himself. But his body is not capable of fully using it to its full capacity. So when Atsushi wraps it around himself, Atsushi has a very compatible body for such an ability. He's got the exact opposite issue of Akutagawa. He has a body that's fully capable of handling power and using it, but he just doesn't have control over it. Akutagawa seems to have control over Rashomon. He just doesn't have the body to use it at its full capacity. But Atsushi does have a body that could use it. So when he wraps Rashomon around his arm and uses it to punch Fitzgerald, it's like the perfect combo. And Dazai was noticing that. And so when he talks to Hirotsu, he's like, yeah, they're perfectly suited for each other. They are compatible, my friend. It's like, uh-huh. So Dazai, being the schemer that he is, I'm sure is going to find ways to get these two characters together. He's going to be our Atsushi Akutagawa shipper. He's going to be the captain of that ship for sure. And he set this whole thing up. We'll talk about it. But yeah, the idea of may I shed away this burden now, and his like letting go of the past and just moving forward. Like I absolutely love it. And Fitzgerald, just the animation with him and Fitzgerald punching each other, it's so perfect shonen. I was like, yes, it's so Dragon Ball Z Bleach. I was like, It's been a while since I've watched a good shonen battle, and this one was it. And the clouds parting and all of it, the colors, and then I love that it's slowly showing Fitzgerald running out of money. And then, yeah, how fitting. How fitting. I refuse to believe that he's dead. Absolutely not. Nah, Fitzgerald's not dead. He may be penniless and may be a stray dog himself now and have to work his way back up to the top, but I refuse to believe that he's penniless. I'm very curious, though. They said that Melville was the guild leader 2 generations ago. So he was the guild leader. There was him, another leader, and then Fitzgerald. So I'm curious to know who the other leader was, if it's of any importance. It may not be. They may have just said 2 generations ago to kind of separate Melville and also establish how old he is. That could have been it. I'm not sure. But yeah, and then our poor boys, they are spent. And the rainbow that comes up between them, like, come on. Come on! Show, I'm buying you. I know exactly what you're talking about. Don't even. But yeah, so that leads me, it makes sense, I guess, too, why Fitzgerald would be not the one to come after Melville. Because Fitzgerald seems like the type of person that would take something by force. And so I'm curious to know if maybe Melville handed off the reins of the guild to someone else that they trusted. And then things, kind of like what Mori did with the previous Port Mafia leader, things went awry and didn't go the way that they wanted to. So Melville was probably okay with Fitzgerald taking over the guild. And then it just kind of got out of control, like extravagant, and went beyond what Melville thought to begin with. And then I like them cutting it close, like Akutagawa. You had 5 seconds left. You should have just stopped it, and you didn't. And you left it to Atsushi, like, oh my god, what a diva. What an absolute diva. Like, oh my god, these two. These two. But yeah, so that makes sense that maybe Fitzgerald just took it from force and it just kind of went from there. Okay, so the idea of the House of the Dead Rats. So, and it's like, does it not look like the mouse symbol? Isn't there a rapper or a musician that has, isn't it Dead Mouse or something that has the same kind of logo? Why is there no copyright on that? Seriously. Okay, so Fyodor, if you read volume 3 of the manga, when we are introduced to Fitzgerald, we establish that he is the leader of the guild, which is the American Gifted Organization. And then we have 2 other leaders that are introduced in the manga. And one has been mentioned in this series, and that's Agatha Christie. She was mentioned back in the Dark Age, or she wasn't necessarily mentioned, but the Order of the Clock Tower was mentioned. And that's the British Gifted Organization. And back in the Dark Age arc, it was established that the British Gifted Organization, Order of the Clock Tower, is the one that chased Mimic out of Europe and led them to go to Japan. And the leader of the Order of the Clock Tower is Agatha Christie, which I read tons of Agatha Christie as a kid, so I was that student that my English teacher was like, you can read Agatha Christie. I'm like, I'm 12. And she's like, here's some murder books. So I was like, okay. So I read a lot of Agatha Christie. I have not read Order of the Clock Tower, I don't think. I've read a ton of other of her books, but she has like dozens and dozens. But I was introduced to her character. So in the manga, we see her. And then we see Fyodor, who is the Russian gifted agency, and his group is called House of the Dead Rats. And so as soon as I saw the mouse, I was like, oh, it's him! And I was very nervous because reading that in the manga, I felt like I'd been spoiled because I've seen some official artwork with him on there. And I was like, who's this guy? He looks kind of like Maury. He has like the same hair and same eye color as Maury. So that was very curious to me. I was like, huh. But yeah, the mouse taking over. And of course, like a rat infiltrating the system and sneaking in and messing up everything like a hacker. How interesting indeed. That's very curious. And then Octagao was like, it's not working. Like he's that person that just instantly gives up on technology. Like, I can't work it. Let's go. And so Kyoka gets the chance to do her entrance exam. And she recognized Atsushi's voice. And the two are connected. The intercoms with the ships. And Melville's like, well, somebody's infiltrated the whale, so I can't do anything about it. I couldn't control it to begin with, so I don't know what we're going to do. And then Kyoka being like, I'll sacrifice myself to get the whale to drop down into the ocean before it hits the city. And, of course, Octagawa's like, yep, do it. And Atsushi's, of course, the one that's like, no, I don't want you to get hurt, Kyoka-san. Kyoka-chan. But, yeah, oh, man. I felt for Atsushi because ever since season 1, I've always viewed Atsushi and Kyoka as like brother-sister. I've never seen them in like a shipping relationship. They've always been like big brother, little sister. And that's probably even more tragic because he views her as like a sibling and someone he connects to from their upbringing. And so the fact that he thinks that she's dead, that's so sad. But I was like, there's no way she dies. No way. I don't believe Fitzgerald's dead. And I was like, there's no way Kyoka's dead. But it's just how? How did she survive? What half-assed way are you going to save her? And it turns out not to be a half-assed way. I had been wondering since the start of this series, since we were introduced to the president, I was like, what is his ability? And they said all men are created equal. And that ability is so freaking cool. I love it. I definitely want to research now the president's ability for the OVA. I'll definitely talk about it in the OVA along with the novel, along with Dazai's entrance exam. That'll be perfect. I can talk about Dazai's entrance exam, the light novel, and I can talk about the president's ability too, since it's connected to the entrance exam. It all worked out. Yes. I love that. The idea that his ability allows him, people that are his subordinates that work for him, that he is connected to, he allows them to be able to control their abilities. But apparently not all the way, because Atsushi, I wonder if now that Atsushi understands that his ability is controllable because of the president's influence, if that's going to increase his ability to be able to turn into a tiger, or if perhaps it's something based on how long you've been working for him. Like the longer you work for the president, the more power and control you have over your abilities. Maybe it's something tied to time and length that you've known the president. That could make sense because that would explain why Atsushi has just gotten control of his ability, but not fully because he's only been in the agency for a little while. So maybe that means that Kyoka won't have full control over Demon Snow yet. But the fact that Kyoka has control over Demon Snow and that she can control her own ability is wonderful. So I'm curious if Dazai's been in the agency. Oh, and that little glance of Octagawa when he sees Dazai, like, notice me, senpai. Like it was instantly like, notice me. I'm curious to know if Dazai's ability, because Dazai's ability is pretty straightforward. Like, how do you develop that? So I guess it didn't change much. But the whole point of the entrance exam, letting her be a part of the agency, and if she passed and became part of it, then she could control her ability. So that it only affects members of the agency. Allows for control over the output of abilities of another. So he can control the output of another's abilities. So is the president able to let Atsushi turn into a full tiger now? Or does he have that ability? And Kyoka passed the entrance exam. It's like the perfect Deus Ex Machina. Like the president is a literal Deus Ex Machina. Okay. And I love that she's in all white with Demon Snow. And she has just the blush on her face and she's so happy. And I love that he hugs her. I'm just like, yes, big brother, give her all the hugs. And she's like, you're hurting me. He's just hugging her so tightly. I'm like, I love it. And then, of course, Dazai's like, I couldn't tell y'all because then it would be cheating and then she wouldn't have had a proper entrance exam. There are stipulations and rules here. I love it. But it had all been planned from the beginning. Him and Rampo, genius strategists. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And then, yeah, Kyoko's passed. She's part of the agency now. And she controls. And then Akutagawa's like, I hate to break up this reunion, but we need to talk about me. I see my strength now. Notice me, senpai. And Dazai's like, gee, I don't know. You know, you did defeat a guild leader, I guess. And then that little blush on his face. And oh my god, he's so much shorter than Dazai. Akutagawa is so much shorter. And then Dazai's like, you've become strong. And the tears! He like sheds tears like, you noticed me. You said it. And then just promptly passes out. I don't know what else I expected, but that was, I just got so giddy. Like that just, and then the parallels. He's like, you protected our city. And then just, it's your city now. You protected it. And it ties back to Dazai and Atsushi first meeting back in episode 1, the sunset, everything. It's so beautiful because it's like, it's such a parallel. At the beginning of the show, Atsushi feeling like he didn't belong anywhere and he had no home and was just scrounging around in the slums trying to make it. And at the end of this scene with him and Dazai saying, it's your city now. Like, you have a place you belong and you're with the agency. And I'm sorry, but I know I've probably said this before, but Miyano Mamoru selling it as Dazai. I can't imagine anyone else voicing him and pulling off what he's done with this character so far. Oh my god. Like that soft voice is so perfect for this character. So we go to this statue and I'm not sure the statue of the little girl, why, if it's significance. It's something about having your shoes on or something. But Ango, so the special ops have apprehended Melville and he's like, we need you to give us some intel. And I love the dynamic between Ango and Melville, because Melville's like, well, I'm just a grunt. What could I possibly know? And Ango's like, dude, I'm a grunt for the special ops, and I know plenty. you don't try to pull the wool over my eyes. I know exactly what you can do. So I really love that. I love the actions between these two characters. And of course, all the bystanders are looking at the giant whale like, oh my god. And I love that the whale is actually a spirit. Like, it's a spirit that follows Melville around and kind of evolves and changes over time. But it's the spirit of the whale that goes with him. Like, you can destroy the ship and everything that's kind of been built around the spirit of Moby Dick. But the actual Moby Dick himself is tied to Melville always. So that makes sense. Melville's like, I'm going down with my ability. He had to. Melville had to stay on the ship, because otherwise the ship wouldn't be a ship without him. So that's kind of disturbing in its own right, because that means probably Fitzgerald made him stay on the ship, because he's like, well, otherwise the Moby Dick's not going to work unless you're here. So I love the idea of that spirit. It's so cute. So many rainbows in this episode. And then, of course, we have Louise, Steinbeck, and Twain. And so the idea of the boss missing in action. So the guild is basically disassembled at the moment. They don't have a clear leader. So things are a little bit chaotic and there's a power vacuum, it seems. And so there are insurgencies within the guild. So everything's kind of chaotic for their organization right now because they don't know what to do. And so Twain has like resigned himself to the fact that he's like, yeah, peace out, guys. I'm going home to finish my biography. Which is a very Mark Twain thing to do, because Mark Twain was infamous for just kind of doing his own thing and not really following the crowd. Like, Mark Twain just kind of was like, I'm going to do what I want, so I guess y'all have to deal. Like, that's very in character, and I like that a lot. And Louise is like, I'm going to go find Fitzgerald. So she's still very connected to Fitzgerald, and her ability is super interesting. So she's like, I need to come. She would be the one to find Fitzgerald because she has all the strategies. As soon as she finds a bit of information, she's going to tie that all together and figure out the best way to find him. So that makes a lot of sense. But I think the one that I'm so intrigued the most by is Steinbeck. One of my friends just had a picture on social media being like, I'm reading Grapes of Wrath. And I was like, sure you are. Have fun with that story. When I first read Grapes of Wrath, it was a story where I literally just chucked the book across the room by the end of it because I was so distraught by the ending of it. And it makes total sense because Twain's like, oh, you're going home to your family. And Steinbeck's like, heck no, I'm not going home to my family. If you've ever read The Grapes of Wrath, The Grapes of Wrath is a very, very sad story. And the things that happen to the main character's family are not good. They are not good at all. His family ends up like in ruins by the end of the story. So it makes sense for Steinbeck's character in this show to not want to go back to his family because he's like, heck no. He's like, I have to stop the insurgency in the guild. So Steinbeck is the one that's like, no, somebody's got to step up, which makes me wonder, I'm like, is Steinbeck going to become the leader of the guild now that Francis is MIA? I think it might, because Twain brings about the idea that I thought you hated the boss. And he's like, I do hate Fitzgerald, which is so fascinating because, you know, back in, I think, episode 5 or 6, Steinbeck was on the boat with Fitzgerald, handing him the bullets, like feeding him things. And I thought at the time, I was like, oh, Fitzgerald and Steinbeck are really close. Maybe not. Maybe Steinbeck is kind of like doing a Dazai Mori situation where Steinbeck's like, I could totally take control of the guild. I just need to wait for the opportune moment. And he says, I hate anyone who controls people with money, which ties very much to The Grapes of Wrath, because The Grapes of Wrath is a story about a destitute family that is struggling and keeps meeting hardships because of capitalism, because of people with money preventing them from having happiness. And through a series of events, it all ties back to that same theme. So that makes a lot of sense with Steinbeck, that he's like, no, I don't like people like Fitzgerald that tries to take control over people based on money. But he depended on wealth to save his family, and this was the result. So at the beginning when we met Steinbeck, he was like, I'm in a contract with Fitzgerald because I need money to help my family. So Steinbeck's like, I wasn't happy with the situation I was in because I was forced to help a man I hated because of money. He's like, now that guy's out of the picture, somebody needs to step up. And I love that he used the vines as a brace for his leg. Very, very cool. I can't bring myself to just leave. So I love it. I'm like, if Steinbeck becomes the leader of the guild, I'm all for it. His power's crazy, so he very well could. And then, of course, Lovecraft ain't dead. Of course not. He's the ancient one. Oh, and I love that Steinbeck's instantly like, oh, you made it, Lovecraft. Hey. And he looks like so happy. He's like, hey, man, you did it. What's going to become of you now? And just Lovecraft's like, screw you all. My contract's over. I'm going back to bed. Bye-bye. And just leaves. And Twain's like, who is he? And Steinbeck being like, what does it matter? He's one of my few friends. And he looks so sincere. I'm like, creepy. Steinbeck, the fact that an ancient creature from the depths of the earth is one of your few friends, Steinbeck, is a little bit disturbing. I'm not gonna lie. But I love it. I love it. And then, of course, they have Kyoka. They have Kyoka making friends and joining the agency. And Atsushi just being like, go ahead. Like just so sincerely. It's just warmed my heart. I was so happy. I loved it so much. And of course, they all give her a big surprise party. And there were so many little details. I wanted to pause this episode and go back and watch, like, what all they're drinking and everything. But her little blush, being so happy, Atsushi being so proud. Oh my gosh. And of course, everyone's just so happy to see her. It's like, yes. Okay, so I wanted to pause this. So, to see all the characters. Okay, so, Kunikita has, like, looks like green tea. Looks like green tea, because of course he would. Kyoka has a little sake cup, but I doubt it's sake because she's a little kid. Naomi has the pink drink. Has the pink cocktail. And then the president has the sake cup, which I'm sure it's sake. Kenji has a freaking tomato. Why? So clearly he doesn't drink. Atsushi looks like he has lemonade or something, which would make sense, I guess. The other girl, not Naomi, but the other girl, I always forget her name. She has like a cocktail with like a Mai Tai or something that has like a cherry and all the fruity drinks in it. Rampo looks like he has orange juice. And then Tanizaki looks like he has a soda, carrot juice, or something. And then, of course, Yasano has a freaking bottle of wine, like the whole damn bottle. Girl, I love Yasano so much. I love her in this. I've ever since episode, I mean, I loved her in season 1, but the episode of her and Rampo, I feel like we got more of her character. And she's like got the blush and she has a glass of wine and she's like welcoming Kyoka. They all have pizza that Tanizaki looked like he made. Kunikita's sitting there like adding up the cost of everything, like, how much is this costing us? Oh my god. And then making hot pot with the hot sauce, all the desserts. Okay, no. Who had the drink? Did Tanizaki have the fruity drink? Because the girl with the red sweater had the other juice. Interesting. So who had the fruity drink? I'm going to find out. I'm going to look at sleeves on people's outfits to know who had the fruity cocktail. Interesting. And I like that Kunikita, he makes a scene like berating them, but then Yasana's like, go ahead, say that he did good. And he's like, fine, you did good. I absolutely love it, but I need to see. And then, of course, Yasana's like, drink with me. And he's like, no, I don't want to drink that much. And then I love that he apologizes to Naomi and the other girl. He's like, I'm so sorry for what I did while I was with Q. And they're like, oh, we forgot about that. And we're like, you're fine. It's okay. We've handled worse, Atsushi. It's totally okay. But, of course, Tanizaki had no clue about it. And then he's like, wait, what did you do to Naomi? What was this? And I want to see, is Tanizaki the one that had the fruity cocktail? I don't know. I wanted to see it real quick. Atsushi-kun. No. I guess Rampo was the one with the fruity cocktail. Interesting. So then, why is Poe here? What the heck? Okay, so yeah. Okay, so it was Rampo had the fruity cocktail. Interesting. But yeah, why is... And Carl the raccoon. Oh my god, all I can think of is Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead saying, Carl. That's all I can think of. Oh my god, Carl the raccoon. Officially best character of the series. Give him a spin-off show. But oh my god, Poe. So Rampo invited Poe. He's like, do I really belong here? I can't stand how timid Poe is around Rampo. Like, is this a ship? Is Poe and Rampo a ship? It should be. I feel like it should be. He's like, I'm from an enemy organization. And Rampo, they're like, Rampo, the boss wants you. And he's like, no, I'll come back later. He's like, stay right there. I gotta go talk to the boss. Oh my god. So, I'm assuming that Rampo is getting him to help them get some insight into the guild. Now that the guild's broken up, Poe probably has nowhere to go. So Rampo's like, come by the agency and we'll have some fun. And he's like, they seem to be having fun, huh, Carl? He likes being left out? I'm so intrigued. I guess it would make sense if Rampo's like, okay, well, the guild's disbanded, so let's just use you, Poe, to find some insight about our enemy. So, because I'm sure that Rampo's thinking Fitzgerald's not dead. So we need to get some insight in order to plan for if there's a counterattack. So, awesome. So, we have this, I wanted to pause on this wine bottle from 1964 that the Port Mafia has. It says Monopoly, of course it does. Romani Conti. Domaine de la Romani Conti from France. It's a 64 Romani. And of course, Koyo, Mori, and Chuya, 3 of the executives. I don't know who the other executives was, because Dazai was an executive. I'm assuming Hirotsu is an executive. So maybe those were the other 2, but I don't know who took Dazai's place. And they say to victory. And I love how smug Chuya looks. He's like, yes. And them all drinking. And it's like Chuya doesn't sit down, which I find that hilarious because Chuya doesn't sit down because gravity. You'd think he would. But then Chuya wanting to punish Akutagawa is interesting. Chuya being like, how do we punish him? And I find Mori's answer to be so in character and on point that it's so... I'm sorry, but I love Mori's character. He's creepy, and we'll touch base on that in a second. He's creepy as hell, but Mori fascinates me because of how true to his character he is. He's like, no, Akutagawa is instrumental to our success. Holding the wine against the sunlight. He's like, Akutagawa's always been this way. And I love this description as Akutagawa stares off into the sunset. He runs off by himself. He causes destruction. And in the end, he contributes the most. And then as long as he keeps doing that, he has a strong nose. So as long as he continues to succeed, there'll be no punishment. So perfect strategy. It's Mori knows how to use his pieces on the chessboard very expertly. I mean, the guy's obsessed with strategy guides. So he's like, I have a loose cannon. Akutagawa is a loose cannon. He's a loner. He doesn't want to work with anyone else. He wants to be by himself, do his own thing. But the Port Mafia gives him a sense of belonging and purpose. And as long as we keep feeding him, he's like a mad dog. As long as we keep feeding the mad dog the scraps of meat and keep him coming back for more, we're fine. As long as he keeps succeeding, because Akutagawa is also someone that demands praise. He's very similar to Rampo in that he wants praise. And he thrives under that positive reinforcement, which is why he got so frustrated when Dazai wouldn't give it to him. But now he has it, so it's like, So Mori's like, look, as long as we keep feeding Akutagawa and keep letting him do what he wants and giving him the freedom he desires and the power that he desires, he'll keep coming back to us. So we're fine. He's fine. We don't have to punish him. No. But then he's like, Kyoyo, why did you not try to escape earlier? So Mori already knows that Dazai is the reason she didn't come back sooner. And I'm sure that, because he's like, oh, it should have been easy for you. And she's like, well. And I love her with her hair down and Dazai and her having such an honest conversation. That's so awesome. Let's make a deal as two grown-ups. And that's so weird to think, because Dazai's 22, but he is a grown-up. And he's been a grown-up probably longer than most people have been teenagers. But I love him saying, he's like, look, I know how we can save Kyoka. He's like, but if we succeed, it's the only way that we can protect her life and her dreams. But here's what we got to do. And I love, because he knows that Koyo likes her and wants to care for her. And Koyo ends up winning because she gets to stay in the Port Mafia and Kyoka ends up being safe. So she's like, Dazai saw how it all play out. And clearly Koyo has a appreciation of Dazai. And she's like, what a terrifying man. And then he's like, yeah. I love that Chuya instantly gets all tsundere, like, no, terrifying man, he's not that scary. But Mori makes a good point. He's like, Koyo, you're strong. Now that your beloved Kyoka is gone, it would be difficult for me to chase you down and keep you here. So he's like, if you decide to leave the Port Mafia now, what can I do? And she's like, oh, I know. But sadly, I must help a clumsy leader with reestablishing the organization. And that seems to surprise Mori. Like, oh, okay. He's like, So it's almost like he thinks that she's flirting in that moment. Like, oh, you're staying to help me, a clumsy leader. This is the creepy line. I only deal with those under 12. Ugh. And she's like, silence. That's enough. I'll sew your lips shut. Ew. So, oh God, that he's connected to Elise. Somehow. I'm assuming maybe we'll find out next season, but that's a creepy line. And that goes back to the president thinking you think like a little girl. Ugh. Like that aspect of Mori is beyond creepy, and I don't like that at all. But then everything else about him, I'm like, oh, you're so fascinating, interesting. But then there's that one little bit of creepy ugh to him that I'm like, oh, no, wait. But, and then of course, Chuya is not even paying attention to them anymore. He's like, Dazai! He's like, you're so dead, I hate you. Like, not even paying attention to their conversation. And then, oh my God, the cutest thing in the world, Kyoka holding Carl. And I love that they just accepted that Poe is there, that this guild member is just is just there. Like Poe's freaking out, like, please leave Carl the raccoon alone. And everybody else is like Tanizaki has a phone, like taking pictures of Kyoko with the raccoon. Kenji and them are all around it. Naomi and the girls are fangirling. The president's like, hope you had your rabies shots. Atsushi doesn't care, is cleaning up the dishes and doing chore-like things because that's probably what he had to do in the orphanage. So he's used to doing something like that. And then poor Kunikita has given up on life, and Poe is literally literally has his knees on his head. Rampo does. So that's amazing. That's a great scene. I love that just shot. They're like, it's so cute. And Kyoko looking so happy to finally have a place she belongs. And Atsushi, oh man, and Atsushi just being happy too that she's there. And then of course, Atsushi's the only one that notices that Dazai's gone. Atsushi's always the one that's like, hey, where's Dazai? And everybody else has just given up. They're like, no, he does his own thing. He doesn't. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that Dazai doesn't celebrate with them, you know? It's kind of sad that he doesn't, because it's like this big moment of happiness that all these characters are sharing, this big moment of happiness and things going well. Dazai doesn't get to experience it. And that's kind of sad, right? Because it connects back to what Dazai said earlier. He's like, every time I gain something, it's taken away from me. So you almost wonder if he doesn't join them in that celebration because he's afraid that it's going to be taken from him. And it's better, I'm sure he thinks as a character, it's better that they're celebrating, but I'm not there. And that's so sad. But I love this art museum wherever they're at. And it's him and Hirotsu. Which Hirotsu's been there a long time. He's the senior. He's arguably been there before Mori even. So he knows quite a bit about the Port Mafia. And Dazai being like, what a weird painting. I could even do it. Huh. And he's like, thanks for the help. So him asking undercover Hirotsu to help him. He's like, did I do enough? Saying all I did was leak the Moby Dick infiltration route to Higuchi. That's so genius. That's so genius because on the one hand, of course, Hirotsu and Dazai both know that Higuchi is like head over heels for Akutagawa and would do anything for him. She's noticed me senpai with him. So it would be so easy and inconspicuous for Hirotsu to just leak the information to the Moby Dick route. Like that's all he had to do. It was so simple. And it was such a tiny bit of information that seems irrelevant, but it's like the dominoes falling. It's like the stack of dominoes. Like he just tipped over one domino. Higuchi found the infiltration route, gave it to Akutagawa. So that's why Chuya wanted to punish Akutagawa. The whole thing with Akutagawa infiltrating the whale was not planned by the Port Mafia. Akutagawa just decided to take a ship and go and be like, doing my own thing. Gonna go stop the were-tiger and gonna go stop him and Fitzgerald, and that's why Chuya was like, Akutagawa like took a ship and did his own thing, shouldn't we punish him? And Mori's like, let him do his own thing. In the end, it helped us out. Like Mori knows that Akutagawa is not gonna do anything that won't help the Port Mafia. And Dazai's like, right, and if she knows, she will tell Akutagawa. And if Akutagawa-kun knows, he'll come in by himself, because that's how he always is. He's always a lone wolf, as I expected. And then Hirotsu, why'd you go through all that trouble to bring Akutagawa together with the Tiger Boy? And this is going back to that. Dazai's like, I wanted to be sure for the real disaster that's about to come. So the guild's just warm up, guys. Now we got Fyodor. He's already on the move. So apparently Dazai has fought with this guy before. He's fought with him before. Everything going... Don't be Aizen, Fyodor. You're not... Everything going according to plan. You're not Aizen-san. We succeeded in creating a strife within the guild and recruiting new members. So Hawthorne has jumped ship with Margaret over to the House of the Dead Rats, which is interesting. And Hawthorne's like, I'm only helping for y'all to have Margaret back to consciousness. Because... That's the thing too. It's karma all coming back. Fitzgerald was like, Fitzgerald thought Margaret was an expendable piece. He's like, I don't care if she's in a coma. She's no help to us now. And Hawthorne's like, I don't like that. So he's taking her to Fyodor being like, look, can you help her? And I'll help you if you help me. And it's so, I love that, like a rat, like chewing on his fingernails, like just sitting there biting on them. It's like kind of gross, but I like it. I like that. It's a nice touch because his fingernails are ragged, like he's been chewing on them. It's cool. Like a rat. I love it. And he looks a lot like Mori Senpai. A lot. Fyodor D. Ability, crime and punishment. Let's paint the land with the blood of the guilty together for a better world. See, here's the thing. Here's the thing, too. You have the guild that Fitzgerald's whole point with the guild was a very self-serving interest. It was very self-serving. He didn't care about the other guild members. He didn't care about the world around him. Fitzgerald was only in it for Fitzgerald and to help out his wife and bring his dead daughter back. Like, his whole motivation is completely selfish. Like, he does not care about anything else. But he has the money and the power to control the guild, or he did. Now that he's out of money, it's like somebody else is going to take over the guild. And I'm hoping it's Steinbeck. That would be awesome. But I don't know. With Fyodor, what makes him scary is that he's not seemingly self-serving. His motivations seem to be for the better world. So people like that are almost scary. The selfish people are scary enough, but the selfish people that are doing things under the guise of helping the rest of the world are even scarier because they think that they have an even bigger self-righteous cause that, like, I'm helping the world, so I'm completely justified. At least Fitzgerald knew he was selfish. He knew he was doing things for his own gain. So there was an inkling of self-awareness there. People like this Fyodor guy do not seem self-aware. They're like, nah, we drink in the Kool-Aid and we're going to try to make the world a better place. And it's like, I don't know about that. And so Dazai making the comment, we won't be able to avoid going to war with that demon I fought in the past. And Akutagawa is formidable enough by himself, but his abilities are valuable the most in a supporting role. We need somebody that's compatible with him, that complements him, that's a forward attacker. And who else would that be other than Atsushi-kun? So we'll need to be more powerful than before in order to fight that with that demon. So again, something more powerful than the former Double Black. Something more powerful than Dazai and Chuya? Atsushi and Akutagawa? I like the parallels of these two pairings. And this conversation with Hirotsu, it's like the past generation getting better for the future. And even Melville made a comment back earlier in the episode. He's like, youth are always obsessed with the past. And that goes right back to this conversation with Dazai. He's obsessed with, how things were before, how can we move forward and become better. And Hirotsu's kind of the same way. So it's, oh my God, it's fascinating. And then Dazai, why do you value Yokohama so dearly? And then Dazai saying, my friend said to me, meaning Oda, and that's the first time they look at each other, you might as well side with people who save others. That's at least a little more beautiful. Tenimuyo. So I'm guessing that's maybe where that quote came from. And then we cut to nighttime with that sushi. And of course, I love the little, like, don't mind me. Look over here, War Tiger. The city we protected. And then, of course, worthless nonsense. Yeah, sure. Keep saying that, Akutagawa. Whole K. And you two look at each other. These two, they're going to have to work together. Very Dazai and Chuya in their attitudes towards one another, but both very complimentary. It's exactly the same as Double Black. They're both complimenting their own abilities. I should have seen it coming. Oh my God. I love it. It's so good. It's so good. So the big question is, moving forward, because Dazai makes the comment that they're going to have to be stronger than ever. So the president is not going to want an alliance now that the guild is gone. He's going to be like, nah, we ain't going to align ourselves with the Port Mafia because it's too dangerous. But Dazai's like, look, we were really strong working with the Port Mafia to stop the guild. We had to be. And if his whole goal is to have Atsushi work with Akutagawa, how are you going to do that without an alliance, right? So the fact that Dazai has been working underground with Hirotsu, and I'm sure Mori would not be happy to find out that Hirotsu has been working with Dazai. I'm sure he would not, even though he trusts Hirotsu a lot. I'm like, is Dazai going to go back to the Port Mafia if the president says no to an alliance to get Atsushi to come along with him? I don't know. But Fyodor is an interesting new antagonist. There's so much set up with these episodes. With this episode in particular, there's so much set up with these scenes and with these characters that has me really excited and interested going forward into season 3 to see what we get. But we can't get to season 3 yet. So what I'm going to do in between now and the OVA is I'm going to read Dazai's entrance exam, and I'm going to research the president and his ability, all men are created equal, now that we've seen what it does. And I'll talk about both of those in next week's episode, which is going to be the OVA. It's listed as episode 25 on Crunchyroll, Walking Alone. So we'll see that. And then the following week, hopefully I'll have read the Dark Age arc by then, and we'll do Dead Apple. So, I love it. This episode was so good. I have talked for quite a while, nearly an hour about this. This may be the longest, other than the Banana Fish series finale, but this may be the longest review for an episode discussion for an episode I've ever done. But there was so much to talk about. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I hope you all enjoyed this too. This was a lot of fun. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. Please no spoilers for season 3 or Dead Apple, but I am excited for the next couple weeks of Bungo Stray Dogs. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back next week with the OVA for Bungo Stray Dogs. Bye.